The year 1947 changed the map of South Asia forever, but behind the borders lies a history of anguish, mass migration, and a nation's agony. Welcome to the story of the partition of India and Pakistan. Welcome back to our channel. In 1947, the Partition of British India created two nations, India and Pakistan, sparking a wave of violence, displacement, and loss that still echoes today. In this video, we'll dive into the turmoil of that pivotal moment and explore how it reshaped South Asia forever. The Roots of Partition, a colonial legacy. The partition did not arise overnight. It was the culmination of centuries of complex history, political developments, and colonial policies. The British Empire, which had ruled India for nearly 2 centuries, had a deep impact on the social, cultural, and political fabric of the region. By the 19th century, the British had introduced various systems and structures that fundamentally altered Indian society. These included administrative divisions based on religious lines, economic exploitation, and the encouragement of regional identities that further divided Indian society. However, the seeds of partition were sown much earlier than the 19th century when the British adopted a policy of divide and rule. The British often played on the existing divisions between Hindus and Muslims, making sure that these communities remained separate and suspicious of each other. In the early 20th century, political movements began to emerge within these communities, each advocating for its own interests. One of the most significant developments was the rise of All India Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who began advocating for separate nations for Muslim in India. The idea gained momentum in the 1940s as Muslims feared their rights would be overlooked in a unified India dominated by Hindus. The idea of Pakistan, a separate state for Muslims, was born, and it quickly gathered political support. On the other side, the Indian National Congress, led by figures like Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi, pushed for a unified, independent India. Gandhi, with his focus on nonviolence and religious tolerance, envisioned an India where Hindus, Muslims, and other religious groups could coexist peacefully. The road to partition, mounting tensions. The years leading up to 1947 were marked by escalating tensions between the Hindu and Muslim communities. The political maneuvering between the Congress Party and the Muslim League reached a breaking point. The British, wary of managing an increasingly volatile colony, decided to leave India, but they were unable to find a solution to the growing divide between Hindus and Muslims. In 1947, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee announced that British India would be granted independence, but the country would be divided into 2 separate nations, India and Pakistan. The reasoning behind this decision was the belief that the religious tensions between Hindus and Muslims were too great to reconcile, and that partition was the only way to maintain peace. In response, the Mountbatten Plan, also known as the Partition Plan, was put forward by Lord Louis Mountbatten, the last British Viceroy of India. The plan outlined the process for the creation of 2 nations, India with the Hindu majority, and Pakistan, which would be predominantly Muslim. The plan also provided for the division of British India's provinces, including Punjab and Bengal, along religious lines. The tragic aftermath, violence and migration. The announcement of partition led to immediate and devastating consequences. Massive migrations took place as millions of Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims sought safety in their respective new countries. It is estimated that about 10 to 15 million people were displaced during this migration. People moved across borders, leaving behind homes, land, and entire lifetimes of memories. The violence that ensued during this period was unimaginable. Hindu and Sikh refugees fled to India while Muslims moved to Pakistan. In some areas, entire villages were emptied, with families being forced to abandon their homes due to the threat of violence. Communal riots broke out across the subcontinent, with atrocities committed on both sides. Families were torn apart, and many were subjected to horrific violence, including murder, rape, and abduction. One of the most devastating aspects of the partition was the violence against women. Thousands of women were abducted, raped, or killed during the riots. Many women were forcibly converted to the religion of the opposite side, and entire families were displaced in the chaos. These women became symbols of the trauma of partition, carrying its scars for generations. The legacy of partition, a divided subcontinent. The effects of partition are still visible today in the form of lingering animosities between India and Pakistan. The two countries have fought multiple wars since 1947, with the most significant being the wars in 1947-48, 1965, and 1971, the latter resulting in the creation of Bangladesh. The Kashmir conflict remains one of the most conscientious issues between India and Pakistan, with both nations laying claim to the region. The border between the two countries has been a source of continuous tension and conflict. Additionally, the partition's impact on the people of the region has been profound. Many families were displaced, with some never finding a way back to their ancestral lands. The emotional and psychological scars left by the partition have been passed down through generations, with stories of loss and trauma becoming part of the cultural memory of both nations. Reflections: the cost of partition. The 1947 partition of India and Pakistan was not just about dividing a landmass, it was about dividing lives, identities, and a shared history. It was a tragic event that left deep wounds in the hearts of millions of people. While the creation of India and Pakistan was hailed as the birth of two nations, the aftermath of the partition was marked by chaos, violence, and suffering. In the years since partition, there has been a growing recognition of the human cost of this historical event. Scholars, artists, and filmmakers have attempted to capture the stories of those affected by partition, and many people continue to seek healing from the trauma of their ancestors' experiences. Today, as India and Pakistan navigate their complex relationship, it's crucial to remember the people whose lives were irrevocably changed by the events of 1947. Understanding the history of partition not only helps us appreciate the suffering of those who lived through it, but also reminds us of the fragility of peace in regions divided by deep cultural, religious, and political fault lines. The partition of India and Pakistan in 1947 was an event of immense historical significance that reshaped the entire continent. It was a moment of liberation from British rule, but also a tragic chapter of division, violence, and suffering. The legacy of the partition continues to affect the political, social, and cultural landscape of the region today. For those who lived through it, the memory of that time remains a powerful reminder of the cost of division. The partition serves as a cautionary tale of how political decisions can have lasting, life-altering consequences on the lives of millions of people. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth stories from history. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.